But we don't have a habit of building monuments that celebrate deaths that didn't happen, monuments to all the lives saved. Maybe it's time we did. In a sense, human beings have been increasingly protected by an invisible shield, one that has been built piece by piece over the last few centuries, keeping us ever safer and further from death. It protects us through countless interventions, big and small, the chlorine in our drinking water, the vaccinations that rid the world of smallpox, the data centers mapping disease outbreaks all around the planet. A crisis like the global pandemic that began in 2020 gives us a new perspective on all that progress. Pandemics have an interesting tendency to make that invisible shield suddenly and briefly visible. For once, we're reminded of how dependent everyday life is on medical science, hospitals, public health authorities, drug supply chains, and more. And an event like the COVID-19 crisis does something else as well. It helps us perceive the holes in that shield, the vulnerabilities, the places where we need new scientific breakthroughs, new systems, new ways of protecting ourselves from emergent threats. Most history books focus on a central topic, a person, event, or place, a great leader, a military conflict, a city, or a nation. This book, by contrast, tells the story of a number, the rising life expectancy of the world's population, giving us an entire extra life in merely 1 century. It should help you understand where that progress came from, the breakthroughs and collaborations and institutions that had to be invented to make it possible. Some of the heroes of this story were scientists or doctors, but not all. Some of them were ordinary people who fought to improve the health of our species by writing articles or organizing protests or sharing an important breakthrough they had discovered in another culture. But they were all people who had a vision of how the world could be made a better place, and who had the daring and the commitment to turn that vision into a reality. This book tells the story of how they pulled it off. Chapter 1: The Speckled Monster. Vaccines. If you had been born 3 centuries ago, the list of potential illnesses or accidents that could threaten your life would be very different from that list today. You would be at no risk from automobile or plane crashes, or from being accidentally electrocuted, because none of those technologies existed in the early 1700s. That would be the good news. But for the most part, the list of potential threats would be much longer than it is now. Getting a simple cut or scrape, the sort of thing that you'd put a Band-Aid on now and forget about, could easily lead to a deadly infection back then. The simple act of drinking water, particularly in big towns and cities, could give you a disease like typhoid. But for many people in the early 1700s, the most terrifying threat they faced was a virus. Scientists later gave it the name variola major when they finally identified it in microscopes a century and a half later. The disease it caused went by another name: smallpox. Smallpox had been a scourge since at least the age of the great Egyptian pyramids. The mummy of Ramses V has visible scars on his face from the pustules that form on the skin of smallpox victims. In some European cities between 1650 and 1750, smallpox accounted for more than 15% of all deaths recorded. Young children were particularly vulnerable to the disease. In Sweden during the 18th century, 90% of smallpox deaths occurred in children under the age of 10. Parents lived with the knowledge that at any moment their child could come down with a fever, followed by the telltale rash, and within a matter of days, the child would be dead, often followed in short order by their siblings. Compared to our modern experience, the whole notion of childhood was inverted. Today we think of children as emblems of vitality and resilience, the vigor of youth. But in the age of smallpox, childhood was fundamentally linked to sudden and catastrophic illness. Being a child in 1700 was dangerous. No amount of wealth or education could protect you from the speckled monster, as smallpox was sometimes called. The list of European leaders felled by smallpox between 1600 and 1800 staggers the mind. During the outbreak of 1711 alone, smallpox killed Holy Roman Emperor